Blue chip defensive back Kenton Kirkland commits to the good guys. Today we talk about that and preview some offensive positions on Locked On Seminoles.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Drake here, and today in the Zoom room, we got Mr. David Wise. Davey, what's going on? What's cooking good looking?
Every day after we get a commitment, especially from a four-star, is a happy day.
It's a happy day. And of course, Dave is talking about Kenton Kirkland, aka Agent K, aka KJ Kirkland, out of Raines High School in Jacksonville, Florida. He's a 3-star by a 247 composite, but 247 themselves has him as a 4-star recruiter. And folks, as you know, 247 is the preeminent recruiting industry in the country for right now. And Dave, this is a 6'1.5" kid, 187 pounds with a 77-inch wingspan. Yep. So you can definitely see the longer rangy cornerbacks with Sam McCall, the previous class, along with Azaria Thomas. Dave, what do you make of this commitment on this Tuesday afternoon? Well, actually, it happened yesterday on Monday night, but on Tuesday as we're recording this.
Well, there's two big things that stand out about Kirkland. One is his wingspan. That kid just has arms for days, so he's going to get in passing lanes. He's going to play taller than he actually is, and he's already tall for a safety at 6'1.5" right now.
Well, he's being recruited as a defensive back, so he's going to play
defensive
safety
back, right.
and corner. So actually, he's going to be a little bit of a Swiss Army knife for the defensive secondary.
Maybe another Xavier Rhodes type. That'd be great. But it's not just that. The dude got bronze in the 400 meter in states this spring. That's crazy impressive for a kid that's 6'1.5". That's obviously focused on football, has a lot of good weight on him. Still more to go. Those long arms and fast are tools you can't teach for a defensive back.
It is, and it's also like kind of nice to see where I know this is kind of like, where FSU is at the time. We went up against Kentucky. Now, for those of you who don't remember, we lost out another 4-star defensive back in Avery Stewart to Kentucky about a month and a half ago. Even though, in my personal opinion, that came a little more towards the the NIL sort of aspect, because you see with Kentucky and with Louisville, it's harder to compete with them. And then you also got to wonder, are you going to be priced out of certain athletes? And also, is the price going to be worth it to make the investment down the line? Now, with Kenton Kirkland, to me, it shows that Marcus Woodson still has it. We've been worried about his recruiting prowess since the Travis Hunter situation, which, I get it. When you lose out the number one recruit in the country and also probably the best recruit you'll ever have, but then you see sort of basically a puzzling sort of strategy when it comes to defensive back recruiting, whether it be in the transfer portal or the high school ranks. So it's really nice to finally see Marcus Woodson come away with a W, especially a kid of this kind of caliber.
Yeah, and obviously Florida State has a rich lineage of both historically and of late of churning out defensive backs into the NFL. And this kid, I'm not going to call him Derwin James or anything, but he has size.
Last season, man. We can do it
right. But again, you can't teach speed at 6'1.5" with a wingspan like that. He should be somebody that has an impact potentially early on, just purely due to his size and speed combo. But it's funny because if you go and look at his profile on 247, for example, and you look at the schools listed under Florida State, I could see a lot of fans, especially, those prone on Twitter to hyperbole in terms of being negative about us. Awful lot of it out there. And you'll see Akron.
We've done it.
We have.
We have done it. We're being
honest here. The perpetual negative people. And you know who I'm talking about. You see Akron, Austin, PA, Cincinnati, and UConn. Normally that's not a list you ever want Florida State lumped in with. That doesn't tell the full story. This kid should be a baller at Florida State. Jacksonville is an area that we have had trouble recruiting historically for obvious reasons. Tends to be a feeder, the whole damn city, for UF, who is recruiting. As much as I hate Billy Napier and I don't trust his evaluations or don't have a reason to yet, Florida's recruiting well and Miami's recruiting even better. And we got to keep up with the Joneses. The race is on. to get someone in the state of Florida back. And it's going to happen. One or more schools in the state of Florida is going to be back. And if we want it to be us first, it starts with landing blue chip prospects.
One, it's pronounced Austin P, not Austin PA. I wanted to correct you, but I know how much you love with your mispronunciations. But two, I'm right there with you. I think with this pickup actually at Jacksonville, as you were saying before, is primarily a heavy leaning University of Florida kind of recruiting hotbed. That's why when we got DeMarcus Walker out of there, I want to say almost a decade ago, that was a big recruiting win for us.
Yep.
But then you see now Miami's getting into there now as well. UF, I think, has had a few commitments from this past class there. And right now it goes to show it's nice where that's happening because, Dave, about a month ago, you and I were very, down, or a little more down than most on the recruiting aspect of this. I think last month we were in the mid to low 40s when it comes to 247s and also on threes. Now, sneakily, FSU has the 21st ranked recruiting class per 247 Sports, and you have the 18th recruiting class per on three. What does this do, basically, or your perception on the state of Florida State recruiting as of right now heading into the season?
Well, there's a lot of good to take from that. Obviously, anytime you're higher in the rankings, that's a good thing. But again, Florida and Miami are seemingly recruiting really well right now. And we've long talked about the lifeblood of the program in terms of recruiting. Just the last half decade, it hasn't panned out. Like under Willie, we had probably gotten some good players in whose development was, how do I put it nicely, stunted by the coaching that they had at the time. And so far under Mike Norvell, I think we wish we have been recruiting better. He wasn't known to be like some elite Florida recruiter or recruiter in general when he came in. So to see us getting back closer to like a 50% or higher blue chip ratio right now on the composite, we have 6 4-stars, 8 3-stars. So getting closer by the day to an even split in terms of the blue chip ratio, almost at a 90 even in terms of the average recruit ranking. And if we're going to get back, it's going to obviously require us to make bowl games, but the quality starts with the players. And if we're not recruiting at a high level, like if we're recruiting like we have been the last couple years, 2-3 years, it's not going to get us to where we want to be. We can be top 25. That's not good enough for most Florida State fans. So got to keep this up. This isn't the end. That we need to see more blue chip commitments.
And I'm right there with you. Not only do we need to see, more blue chip recruitment commitments, but I also need to see basically the talent to spread out a little bit more when it comes to the recruiting rankings. Right now, we are 21st in the country, and I love how basically we're developing these blue chip prospects with Keldrick Falk in the fold, Lucas Simmons, basically. So basically, trenches are fine. Defensive backs are starting to shape up a little bit more with Quindarius Jones, who might be a steal, and then with this addition with Kenton Kirkland. What I need to see now is basically Randy Shan finally closing the commitment on Blake Nicholson out of Manteca, California. I want to see probably maybe one more wide receiver.
Hakeem Williams
will be great to add alongside Vendravius Jacobs and Goldie Lawrence. And I hate to say it, I need to see at least one quarterback from the high school ranks join this class.
Agreed.
Chris Parsons gone. Brock Glenn went to Ohio State. And so I need to see basically Mike Norvell and Tony Torcross by extension actually basically picking up a commitment. And to me, if I'm them, I go to Miami, talk to Emory Williams, the kid out of Milton, Florida, the QB commit, and be like, hey, Jaden Rashad is going to be your number one option because Jaden Rashad is a very damn talented kid. We don't have a QB committed right now. Why don't you come over here to us? Because also we were the first to offer you, or at least trying to test the waters in that, because that kid out of Milton, Florida is extremely talented.
Yeah, the thing you said that resonates most with me is recruiting or having a high school quarterback in the fold. That is what Willie Taggart got absolutely killed for in his time here, and it set us back. We did get AJ Duffy, great pull by Mike Norvell, and I expect him to have a bright future here as a starter sooner than later. But you can't just have one quarterback. Just remember, Jameis Winston sat behind EJ Manuel for a little bit, so you got to have multiple in the fold. Every year, Florida State used to be good. Used to be among the elite teams, finishing top 5 every year. We had an elite or a very, very good quarterback with a soon to be elite or very, very good quarterback sitting behind them learning. And we got to get back to doing that, to having guys sitting there learning for a year or two, coming in, repeat, rinse.
And we understand. And we understand too that this QB isn't going to impact the team at all to maybe 2025,
Right.
like further down the road. But it's more that we need the depth purposes, because right now, as much as we love JT, he only has 2 scholarship QBs behind him because Joe Purdy transferred out. AJ Duffy's a true freshman, which I don't think any of us, if you listened to the episode yesterday, is comfortable with him with the range. And then you have Tay Rodemaker, which we don't know where he is developmentally wise. So right now we need, basically for depth purposes, the total amount of prospects in the fold. And folks, with college football season around the corner, we'd be remiss to remind you here at Locked On Seminoles to basically be careful out there when you're going out, tailgating, enjoying the game in your favorite watch party or your favorite bar, because, folks, you're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride, but then you're like, nah, you live nearby. You can make it home. Okay, it's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyways? And even so, what's the worst that can happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everyone knows about the risk of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. That still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel and while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. If you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan about getting a ride. It only takes 1 minute to change your life or someone else's forever. So, folks, drive sober or get pulled over.
All right. And coming back, we are ready to talk some offensive position previews. Yesterday, we did quarterbacks. Go back. I think it's worth a listen. And today, we're going to talk running backs and receivers, but there's some interesting news that just came up, and it impacts both positions. Drake. Joshua Burrell is a receiver, a big, strong receiver. We talked about him, I think, last week as arguably one of the stronger players on the team, definitely pound for pound, one of the strongest players on the team.
And also probably one of our favorite recruits, too, from the last class.
Right. We all really like Josh Burrell. We're huge fans here, and you should be, too. And interesting personnel move. Drake, tell the listeners what happened with Josh Burrell today.
So Mike Norvell officially announced today, unfortunately, that C.J. Campbell, the preferred walk-on running back, did suffer a season-ending injury today, which I'm not going to lie to you, I was super stoked to see him actually probably hit the field, because the one thing I do trust Mike Norvell about is his running back evaluations. Look at his time in Memphis with Tony Pollard, Antonio Gibson, and Darrell Henderson. So now, to, I guess, alleviate the blow and probably give him some playing time, Joshua Burrell is getting some run as a hybrid wide receiver running back, and he actually performed very well in practice today, was showing a clear ability to hit the hole, shed some tackles, which is not surprising because Dave, as he said last week, is probably one of your strongest players on your team. So to me, this is probably a huge, huge upside pickup and probably a sky's the limit kind of thing with Joshua Burrell kind of completing the 4 horsemen of the run apocalypse alongside Trey Benson, Treshaun Ward, and Lawrance Toafili in the backfield.
Absolutely. It's exciting because we've been excited about his potential as a receiver, but out of the backfield, obviously a threat to catch the ball, more than a threat, our best receiving running back right away, considering he's a receiver. But he is big and strong. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's, all these Alabama running backs that they just seem to have 3 on the roster of at all times. But
and Jamirga comes in from transfer portal too. Just, the rich getting richer, right? Unfair.
But Josh Burrell is potentially unfair at the running back position if he can get a hold of it. And if he can, not run too high, because he's going to be really tough to bring down. Like we said, that kid is big and strong. He's fast enough. If he can learn that position, he's a perfect complement to what we have, because we have an awful lot. We're going to get into running backs now. We have an awful lot of small or light, fast guys. Lawrance Toafili is not your starter, but he's going to get a lot of reps, and he is not very big, you could say. Treshaun Ward isn't a bulldozer of a running back. Trey Benson, we expect to be our bell cow running back. He's not massive.
Are you sure? He's a pretty big kid. I'm going to push back a little bit on that, because Trey Benson, I kind of see as a little more the thunder to Treshaun Ward's lightning with the size. Let me pull up his stats real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, please. And while you're doing that, Josh Burrell, I think, is a different size than that. I would expect him to immediately be our strongest running back. And, say what you will about like Carlos Williams and James Wilder and their decisions to play running back, but there was definitely a use for them in our offense. Having that guy that on 3rd and 1 is going to fall forward for a yard because he's just that strong. There is absolutely a use for that, especially if you can wing him out of the backfield and have him going out for a pass that you expect him to catch.
So Trey Benson, as I was looking at, 6'1", 215 pounds, which okay. I think he's at a little bit heavier now, but also with fall camp, you're probably going to lose some of that weight. So I'll probably stick with 215. Treshaun Ward, you're right. It's a little bit of your smaller back. He's listed at 5'10". He's 192 pounds. Yeah. But to me, I love this, kind of this play calling, this personnel decision because it kind of does, complement the 4. And then also sometimes you do have Ja'Kai Douglas go out in the backfield and move from the backfield as well on a lot of his famous wheel routes. So to me, this kind of goes to what Microventure Funding asked actually earlier today in the comments, that does FSU have a top 3 rushing attack in the ACC? And to me, I think that with the combined efforts of all 4 that we have now, including someone that, you were high on when he committed with Rodney Hill, who also probably can get some burn later down the year. Yep. To me, I think collectively they can beat out a Will Shipley in Clemson. They can beat out a Sean Tucker, even though Sean Tucker to me is the best running back probably in the conference, a top 5 running back in the country.
Can't do it all himself.
He can't do it all himself. And I think the only question is, do we think that Mike Norvell will actually kind of pick maybe Trey Benson to basically go a little more than the 10 carries or 12 carries that he gave Jashaun Corbin through the beginning of the year, even though he is coming back off the lower leg injury?
Yeah. So it's an interesting year for Florida State at running back, because if you think back historically, I'm trying to think of the last time we had such a committee approach, I think, at the running back position. I think it was like the Jermaine Thompson and Chris Thompson and Jermaine Thomas year, which was, I want to say 2007 or 2008. You have 4 guys at least in the mix here who I think are going to get a good amount of carries. Rodney Hill, you mentioned. Yeah, I'm very high on him. And he was one of the players that bulked up substantially and right out of high school. He got into fall camp and hit the ground running. And that dude looks a lot bigger quickly and apparently hasn't lost speed. But yeah, we talk about Trey Benson as a potential bell cow type running back, but Treshaun Ward proved last year that he was worthy of his carries. We've talked about this ad nauseum. In spite of laughable run blocking last year along the offensive line, he was able to find holes and get to the second level and make defenses pay. And so I don't expect him to, I would expect improvement, or if you give us what we had last year out of Treshaun Ward, if you give us the same Treshaun Ward this year, that is fantastic. And it's a great compliment to Trey Benson and, Lawrance Toafili. I think we have a good idea of what he is as a player on this roster. He's fast. He is evidently just not going to put on the kind of weight we would expect to be shouldering a ton of carries, but he's going to be good in spots where he comes in fresh, and he's just one of the fastest guys on the field at that time. So yeah, there's a good committee of players whose skills and attributes, I think, add something to the equation. I don't think you're going to see just Trey Benson getting 1,000 carries and nobody else touching the ball.
Yeah, I don't think that either. And I think that's kind of how we have so much talent in that backfield. I think the comedy will be doing a disservice to basically keeping all, you want your players to keep on fresh and towards later ends of games, especially when we get in these tighter contests, have a late lead. Hey, let's run the clock a little bit more. Actually, with our solid running back. So then I kind of want to ask you, what is the goal that you have set for this entire position group? Is it a yards total? Is it a yards total amongst all 4 of them? Or is it someone that basically breaking sort of basically the receptions rate, or do we want to see a little more out of all of them?
Well, this dovetails interestingly with the conversation we had yesterday. I said I wanted to see no less than 20, ideally 25 passes a game from Jordan Travis. We have this restocked room of receivers, which we'll get to next, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I want to see the receivers getting all of these targets. Jordan Travis dumping off to running backs. If our running backs are going to be capable pass catchers, That's again going to add yet another dynamic to this offense. And one thing Mike Norvell was very good at Memphis was using what he had at his disposal as best as possible. When he trusted the running game, he went to the running game. When he thought the passing game was best, he went to the passing game. If these running backs are capable of catching the ball well, and if defenses aren't accounting for it, I would expect Mike Norvell to put an emphasis on making them pay. That said, what are my goals for this team? So I guess just vaguely, I want to see a concerted effort to throwing the ball to the running backs out of the backfield. In terms of a numerical achievement, I would like to see, just like last year, we had 2 guys with 500 or more rushing yards. Treshaun Ward had 515. Jashaun Corbin had 887. I don't expect Trey Benson necessarily to be 1,000-yard runner because we have a good committee, a good 4+ running backs in here. So I would like to see, again, 2 guys with 500+ yards. And I would like to see the first of the 2 with, I don't know if I want to say exceeding Jashaun Corbin's 887.
That's total yards?
500 rushing yards for each. Mm-hmm. And I would like to see one of the 2 with, let's call it 750. That'd make me happy.
I think that I'm in the camp that I think Trey Benson is going to be the best running back we've had since Cam Akers' second season. I fully expect, and this is going to be like a goal, so that's kind of a little more of a pushing, kind of a hot take on territory. I think Trey Benson can total 1,000 yards total when it comes to basically 750 rushing and then an extra maybe 250, maybe 300 receiving the ball. And I expect Treshaun Ward to be around the 650, 700 mark as well. So to me, I expect from our 2 top backs to have around, with my math, around 1,800 total yards, 1,750 total yards. And to me, I think with this core group, that is easily attainable. And then also with the offense, you have to keep Jordan Travis in account when actually basically doing a lot of these play calling. So to me, I think that this running back group will be tops in the conference, and then also basically helping our offense take the next step forward to the 8 wins that we believe should be attainable for this season.
Yeah, and just to add to what you just said, it's funny you said 1,800. Jashaun Corbin and Treshaun Ward last year combined for 1,700 scrimmage yards. If you add Lawrance Toafili, which was their 3rd leading rusher, taking out Jordan Travis, you got to 2,000 total scrimmage yards. So I would like to see, in light of me saying that I'd like to see a concerted effort to pass to the running backs, break 1,800. I want to see more scrimmage yards from our top 2 running backs than we saw last year.
Okay, Dave. Yeah. We are now towards the end of today's show, and we will be remiss here. We're going to talk about our friends in the wide receiver room. We brought in 4 separate transfers. One of them, Winston Wright, we don't know whether they'll be ready for game 1 or even be ready for game 6 or ready for the season at all. So let's push them off to the side.
Yeah.
Why don't we talk a little more about our friends Micah Pittman, Johnny Wilson, Duquesne, and some of the old guard with Keyshawn Helton, Ontario Wilson. How do you feel about this group? And also, who do you see basically starting against Duquesne and, more importantly, against LSU and Baton Rouge on Labor Day weekend?
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to point out about Florida State's receiving group last year was pull up the statistics of who led the team in receptions last year. It's a little alarming. First on the team was, you want to guess?
Ontario Wilson.
Jashaun Corbin, 25.
Oh, God, no.
25 receptions led the team. Third was Cam McDonald with 24, or tied for second. 5th was Treshaun Ward. So we had 2 receivers among the top 5 on the team in receiving in terms of receptions. Andrew Parchman was one. He's no longer here. Ontario Wilson was the other with 23. That's not ideal. If only 2 of your receivers are among the top 5 on the team in receptions, and the team leader in receptions had 25, that's not good enough to get the job done. And the leader on the team in receiving yards was 382, Ontario Wilson. That's a small total. That's if you're talking about making predictions for this year, man, it would be really tough not to predict that we'll have 3+ guys with more receiving yards than our team leader last year. So yes, I am way more optimistic about the group going into this season. From the guys that are coming back last year, I can't think of a better way to put it than you did yesterday, which is or last week, if you're having somebody like Ontario Wilson or Keyshawn Helton as your like number 3 or number 4 receiver that you're depending on, you're in very good shape. I feel very good about the 2 of their positions on the team going into the season.
Agreed.
without them having to be relied on as like our top options. Now we have a whole new group coming in. Deuce Spann might be the fastest player on the team. Johnny Wilson has seemingly every day been one of the top players in practice and in scrimmage. And then obviously, like you said, Winston Wright, we'll see how he comes back from his injury, but he was one of the best receivers in the Big 12 at West Virginia.
Also a great returner too.
Right. Exactly. A great returner too, which obviously we're in desperate need of. If you've listened to this podcast at all, or watch any Florida State football in the last few years. But you would expect, I would expect two of those guys, just 2 of the newcomers, to have more receiving yards and more receptions than the team leaders last year. I would expect somebody like Malik McClain and 1 or more of Ontario Wilson and Keyshawn Helton to, again, have more as many or more receptions and receiving yards as the team leaders did last year. It was just a bad year receiving for Florida State. And it creates a really interesting question for what you said of who are the starters. Well, there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we're told. There's a lot we've seen in practice and in scrimmage, and we're told from practice and scrimmage, but we'll see what happens when the lights turn on. Because, and I say that all to say, I thought Malik McClain would be our breakout player of the year this year. I still believe that. I still want to see Malik McClain starting at the wide receiver 1 position.
Which he will. He's had apparently a very, very good fall camp after a very lackluster spring.
Yeah, and it was good to see that out of him, because obviously that made me worry. But Malik McClain,
that's your boy. That's why.
It is. To me, he's always been like the guy that could turn into the next Tamorrion Terry. And I'm talking about the 1,000-yard Tamorrion Terry. I've seen the potential in him. We all have. He's acrobatic. The dude can jump. The dude can run. If he can put it all together, like one of those rounds of golf where you hit a few good shots, but they never come together. If he can pull it all together this year, I could absolutely see, that was for Max, I could absolutely see him being our Tamorrion Terry of this year. I would like to see him starting, like I said, against Duquesne. And I don't know, I'd like to see the staff get creative with what they do. I mean, I'd be happy seeing like Johnny Wilson on the other spot outside and Micah Pittman at the slot. You could
Micah Pittman to me is baby Deebo Samuel. You need to put him in the slot. You need to have a lot more motion routes with him too, out of the backfield too, because he's a bulldog in between the numbers right there. That's someone that basically he's gonna be a tough to bring down.
Yeah, and it's funny. He's one of the names I forgot to mention, and he could eventually end up being one of our highest impact players on the team overall, because he's going to impact the receiving game, and he's certainly going to impact the return game that desperately needs him. But we're talking about receivers right now. And if you throw out a 3 of Malik McClain, Johnny Wilson, and Micah Pittman, that just on the outside, you have the kind of height that Jimbo Fisher emphasized when he was here and when he built his championship team. He was strongly of the position that your outside receivers need to be big. They need to present size matchup problems for the defense. And those are 2 guys that I don't care what defensive backfield you're going up against. They're going to present problems with their size. Then you got to worry about Micah Pittman all over the middle of the field.
I know. And then you see Johnny Wilson, who has 6'7". Like, even if he's not your most consistent catcher, that's still someone you have to account for, because you can't teach 6'7". And the way he moves, his flexibility too as well. He's going to be probably your primary red zone target, because, I mean, what is the average DB 6'1" nowadays? Maybe 6 feet.
Maybe 6 feet.
Maybe 6 feet, probably around there. And then 6'7", where with that long wingspan to probably be around 7 feet. To me, that's someone that I'm very excited to see actually how he's implemented. My only concern, and I kind of want to like wrap this up with you today about this, is these wide receivers were not the most productive at their previous spots. Micah Pittman with injury, same thing with Johnny Wilson at Arizona State. Deuce Spann had 5, although there are 5 really dope highlight reel catches at Illinois. Does that raise any concerns with you? Because we were relying on Winston Wright to be that productive transfer wide receiver.
Yes and no. Here's the thing. We're coming into this year in terms of with a receiving corps that's basically minus Andrew Parchment. And had we not done what we did in the transfer portal, we would be rolling this year with basically what we came back with from last year. And I wouldn't feel good about that. But we've added, I think, enough that we can sustain an injury or two. And our worst case, and it's a bad case, our worst case is that we end up in a position similar to where our receiving core was last year, except I still expect development from Malik McClain. And I don't expect all 4 of the newcomers to be injured for like the entire season or anything like that. So if like Michael Pittman or Johnny Wilson, for example, were to miss time, if Malik McClain has taken that next step, that'll matter an awful lot less. And it's just unlikely, I think, that all the newcomers are suddenly injured and we're back to the 2021 receiving core.
Yeah, and I think it's at the point where like you took 4 receivers.
Yeah,
they all at least one of them kind of has to hit at the end of the day. And like I think that I know we give a lot of, you know, what's the word I'm looking for here? I guess when discussing Ron Dugan's, I guess, you know, tenure on the staff. Thank you. A lot of flack. God, that's the whitest word ever. We give him a lot of flack basically for his development of wide receivers. And also here, you know, his tenure down in Miami was sort of the same damn thing. But to me, it kind of feels like it's the perfect storm for him to kind of have a rebound about like being back on staff.
Yeah.
You hear Hakeem Williams is trending in this direction. You see all the things about Johnny Wilson, Malik McClain appears to be developing. So to me, I think this is the prime moment for Dugans to basically do something, because honestly, if he doesn't, he's not going to be here next year. We already almost replaced him this past year with Jawan Sider over at Penn State. And for Dugans, it's simply just put up or shut up time. But folks, that's all we have for today. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Seminoles first listen each and every single day. Now, Dave will tell you what to do on the podcast level and also the YouTube instructions.
The podcast, everybody, you can find anywhere you find your podcasts: Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, Apple, iTunes Store. You can find us everywhere. And on YouTube, if you liked this video, give us a like, let us know. Leave a comment if you have any heavy hitting thoughts on today's video. We read comments and questions regularly, and especially on mandatory mailbag Mondays. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ding the little bell over there at the top, and it'll let you know when our videos drop.
And always subscribe, and folks, put your comments down below who you feel will be the position group overall. We forgot to do a massive goal, but I think Dave said that we would have 3 receivers go over, 373 yards from the past season. So folks, put your comments down below. What are your goals for the running backs, the wide receivers? And as always, this was Drake. That was Dave. And we'll see y'all next time on Locked On Seminoles. Take care, everybody. And RIP Max.
Go Noles. RIP Max.
RIP Max.